welcome to PENSARE Basketball. The Toronto Raptors are a good basketball team. They have turned around what was an abysmal season from the optics perspective, outside looking in last season, and they are the Cinderella of the NBA this season, just like Detroit was last season, just like Sacramento was 2-3 years ago. This always makes for a good story. A team that everyone counts out, a team that everyone doubts, and a team that just kind of comes out of nowhere and consistently wins basketball games in a convincing way. But the question is always, and this has always been a question through my lifetime, but not through my father's lifetime, which is when a team succeeds, who gets credit? Now, again, there's a lot of controversy around this subject. When the 7 seconds or less Suns were successful, Steve Nash won MVPs as the author of the offense. But a lot of point guards, a lot of guards in general have succeeded under Mike D'Antoni's system. Does Mike D'Antoni deserve a little bit more credit? Do perhaps the defenders in that lineup, like Sean Marion and Amari Stoudemire, not get enough credit? What about the role players who kind of fit out, like Boris Diaw and Raja Bell and Leandro Barbosa? Did they get enough credit? It's very difficult to divide credit for a team accomplishment because everybody plays a role. Someone is defending, someone takes the toughest matchup every single night. Someone is charged with playmaking, someone is charged with shot making, someone is charged with spacing the court, someone is moving around a billion screens, opening up pockets of space for everybody. And I think for my birthday, because my birthday is in 3.5 hours, I was thinking, let's start with one of my favorite words, which is gratitude. So today is not going to be a slander pod in terms of who isn't doing something right. It is going to be all of the people that I wish to thank and pay thanks to for making the Raptors, my favorite team in the NBA, a good basketball team again. And it's going to be an opportunity to reflect. It's going to be an opportunity to dissect. It's going to be an opportunity to just, hopefully by the end of this video, have an understanding of just who is doing what, who has been doing what, and perhaps maybe defeat the narratives that some people might say, oh, it's all Masai. Oh, it's all Bobby. Oh, it's all IQ. Oh, it's all RJ. Oh, it's all Scottie. No, I think there's plenty of credit to go around. And I believe Ocean God said, how old are you? Well, it's a pretty open secret. I've shared my age many times on this channel. I am about to turn 38 years old in 2.5 hours. So, or 3.5 hours. Weirdly enough, I was born in Europe. So technically my birthday already happened. But nevertheless, November 26th, my birthday. Hopefully the Raptors can get another win. The Atlanta Hawks, a team that has been hot around the NBA, around the Eastern Conference, they are currently on the precipice of losing a basketball game. The Magic and Sixers are currently playing against each other. Those are also teams that are on the come up, maybe right behind the Raptors. So one of those teams is going to register a loss tonight. Either way, the Toronto Raptors have a very good opportunity to punch their ticket to potentially, I don't know, like maybe a conference finals, because this team reminds me of the Indiana Pacers. And just like with the Indiana Pacers, where you could pay a lot of credit to Andrew Nembhard, you could pay a lot of credit to Rick Carlisle, you could pay a lot of credit to their GM, Kevin Pritchard, for putting together that team, making us, very timely trade for Pascal Siakam. Winning organizations, there's always a lot of credit to go around. If you look at the OKC Thunder, ton of credit to go around. There's a ton of role players who buy in. Typically, when you have a winning team, it's usually 1 through 15. It's usually 1 through 15. When we're talking about dividing credit on most winning teams, most winning basketball teams, divide credit 1 through 15. There's usually a ton of credit to go around. So without further ado, let's start with the Toronto Raptors credit pie. This is a shout out to Hello and Welcome. They did I think they did a slander pod at one point. And they did a blame pie earlier in the season when the Toronto Raptors were not doing well. So I thought, let's do a credit pie. Let's do a credit pie. And let's start with Darko Rajakovic, to whom I actually assigned 20% of the credit for what the Toronto Raptors are currently doing. And 20% is as high as I'm going to go for anybody. Spoiler alert. I think Darko Rajakovic deserves an immense amount of credit for sticking to his principles, for getting players to buy in, for spearheading or reversing a trend of poor development in Toronto, for being such a consummate professional through 2 years of losing, in which he was basically asked to lose basketball games for the sake of tanking, developing, never let it slip that he was unhappy with the situation. I remember when Darko Rajakovic was introduced as Toronto's next head coach, and he was replacing a championship head coach, Nick Nurse, that a lot of people still believed in. A lot of people felt like, hey, we're going with this totally unproven commodity. And a lot of people suggested the man could not coach. They suggested that he was a yes man. They mocked his accent. They mocked the espressos. They mocked, the high energy. And I remember, a player that I talked to who doesn't play for the Toronto Raptors, and he said he better be real. He better be real. This better be real, because if it's not real, he's going to get fired so fast. And I did my own research on him. Obviously, we come from the same hometown, Čačak, Serbia, and I did a lot of research on him coming up, and I came to the conclusion that actually the people who knew him 30 years ago say the same things as the people who talk about him on record 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago. No, this is not he's not faking it. Last night, Brandon Ingram, following his 37-point performance, credited Darko Rajakovic, perhaps a bit of a slight to his former head coach, Willie Green, who is abysmal, but also just talking about how Darko's got him to buy in, how he's trusted him. And frankly, I think that every player who has played for Darko has had some modicum of success, whether it be here or whether it be going on to their next stop. I think Dennis Schroeder became a better basketball player. I think OG Anunoby became a better basketball player. And I think RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Scottie Barnes, ultimately now Brandon Ingram, I think everybody has become better underneath him. And I think that he has gotten a lot of buy-in. I think he's been very discerning about who he gives opportunities to. I think he's been relentlessly patient, breathing confidence into guys who are struggling. Emmanuel Quickley struggled earlier. Jakob Poeltl struggled earlier. For a basketball player to struggle and to have that, my coach has my back, that is very important. For a man who has clear stars on his team, max contract players, to not play favorites, to treat the 13th, 15th guy with as much respect, to have buy-in from those guys. You never see any bad body language on the Toronto Raptors bench. Again, last night, a little insight into Brandon Ingram's mind. He was talking about the Raptors' current win streak, and he said Darko would never let that come into our locker room. And I think that that is very important. A coach, if nothing else, directs focus. What are we focused on a night-to-night basis? This is a team that plays hard. This is a team that, through all their losing last year, became a top 5 defense to end the season, and nobody cared. This is a team that has come and shattered expectations. I believe this man is going to get a lot of love and should get a lot of love for Coach of the Year. I think he deserves a ton of credit for changing the philosophy, culture, body language, team culture, atmosphere, development pipeline, everything. And I see it permeating through every element of this organization. I see it in the 905. I see it in the Raptors Summer League. They played some of the best basketball that I have seen in the Summer League. They have carried that through into their draft philosophy. They have carried that through into their scouting. It is just permeated. And he is that magnificent type of person, that effervescently positive person, the same person that Devin Booker, Desmond Bane, all these guys, Mikal Bridges, have credited for believing in them. He has a very unique approach to team dynamics, which I think is very positive. He instills this idea that we're not going to talk about people who are not in the room. If you have a problem with your teammate, we're going to talk about it together. This kind of, I want to say, like, moral absolutism is very refreshing for me personally, watching it from the outside in. And I think that he has stuck to his guns. He has stuck to his principles. And even on a night like last night, where it would be very easy to become seduced by, Brandon Ingram had 37 points and bailed out our offense a million times, and Brandon Ingram's amazing, he is not morally corruptible. He sticks to what he thinks. The team believes what he thinks. They are a walking embodiment of everything he talks about: swagger, confidence. This is a team that walks into every single night thinking that they can win. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that he is prepared. Every day he comes into practice with energy, and he asks them to bring it, and they do it for him. He asks them to guard, and they do it for him. There is maybe a 2-week stretch in his entire coaching tenure so far with the Raptors where I could argue the Raptors did not play hard for him. So that is a huge thing. And I will say this, it is very difficult to get good chemistry and buy-in when contracts are looming, when losing is happening. And that's what he had last year. He had one of the most positive team cultures on a 30-win team. And right now, I think the team culture is going to get even more positive. So shout outs to Darko Rajakovic. I think he deserves 20% of this pie. You know who else deserves a lot of credit, and that's Masai Ujiri, the man who was unceremoniously let go by Rodgers because they were cheap and they knew that they were going to have to give him a very fat extension. I think I haven't particularly thought very much between Bobby and Masai, but you could honestly throw a little bit of Bobby into this. I don't know how much of Bobby, how much of Masai, but this is basically a management overall pie. And I think the guy that deserves a lot of that is the guy who hired Bobby Webster, the guy who hired Darko Rajakovic, the guy who drafted Scottie Barnes, the guy who pushed for a Brandon Ingram trade. The reason he doesn't get more is because he traded Norman Powell. He traded first round picks. He probably screwed up on a lot of first round picks. And I always go back to that quote, COVID set us back 5 years. Never understood it. It haunts me to this very day. I still don't understand it. I've started to understand it now. The draft is such a huge thing. Organizational philosophy, being good people. But also the reason that Masai gets so much credit from me is because he dared to pivot. He dared to pivot. He loved OG Anunoby. Loved him like a son. He loved Pascal Siakam. He loved Fred VanVleet. These are guys that he became very emotionally connected with. And when you win a championship with people, that tends to happen. So for him to pivot away, knowing it was the right thing for the team's future, for him not to trade away, 3-4 first round picks for some splashy win now move, trying to get Mikal Bridges or Desmond Bane to try to save his job, for him to have that sort of, because I've watched a lot of bad presidents and general managers come through. I've seen a lot of short-sighted decisions. I've seen a lot of people approach Masai's job with well, I'm not going to be here when that mistake turns out to be a mistake. So what the hell? What the hell? And you can argue that Masai maybe wasn't as involved over the last couple of years. But I would say when you're a great leader, delegation is your involvement. He put the right people in place, and you see the people that he handpicked: Jeff Weltman, Orlando Magic, Teresa, president of the Toronto Tempo, Bobby Webster, his successor, Dan Tolzman, probably going to get poached at some point as well. He's put in good people. Most importantly, he trusted the process of a rebuild. Granted, maybe he didn't tank hard enough for some people, but he refused to let the Toronto Raptors become the Washington Wizards. He refused to let them become a laughingstock. He continued to talk about winning championships. He continued to hold himself accountable. He actually got up there and did one of the rarest things that a president of his status could ever do. He said, maybe I'm at fault. Maybe it's my fault. And I always have a lot of respect for him, for the integrity with which he held to this job, for the heart with which, and even if I criticize, many times I've criticized Masai Ujiri for being too emotional, too delayed in his responses. Certainly did not love the Norman Powell trade. And there's many, many, many moves in his history that I disagree with. But honestly, the stability that he brought, the respectability that he brought, you can probably say right now the Raptors have a championship because this man demanded that they win championships here, because he spoke about it every single day. And you could probably argue that when they won a championship, they didn't rest on their laurels. They kept thinking about the next championship, precisely because that's who he is. The Raptors are Masai Ujiri's team until further notice, until drastic moves are made. He is the one who always had the vision, and maybe sometimes he was early. He saw big playmakers, long wing defenders. Well, last I checked, the OKC Thunder won a championship playing his style of basketball. It didn't work out perfectly, but I know that the next championship that the Raptors win, when they win, I know he will continue, like his effect will continue to impact this team. So I think Masai, Bobby, Dan Tolzman, Teresa, all the people, Larry Tannenbaum, those people deserve a ton of credit. What about Brandon Ingram? I'm going to give Brandon Ingram 10%. So 50% of the pie is already complete. And I think Brandon Ingram deserves a ton of credit. First of all, the numbers may not be super efficient so far, but they're going to get more efficient. I think BI deserves a ton of credit for putting the work that he put in this offseason to getting himself right. I think he deserves a ton of credit for buying into a team where he is clearly the most skilled scorer and can do really whatever the hell he wants and probably walk out of the offense many times. He has chosen to buy into the offense. He has not been extremely efficient on contested catch and shoot threes, and those threes are contested precisely because he is the honing missile of the Raptors offense. He is a guy that nobody wants to leave open. And frankly, they're able to contest him on his 3-point shots, and his 3-point shots are not going in at the rate that you would expect, precisely because teams are able to sleep off of Scottie Barnes. They're able to sleep off of Jakob Poeltl. They're able to sleep off of Jamal Shead. He makes a lot of things go. And he is probably one of, if not the biggest reason for the Toronto Raptors' top 5 offense and top 5 half-court offense. There is no world, there's no planet in which the Raptors have a top 5 half-court offense without him. It doesn't matter what the net differential or plus-minus stats say. It doesn't matter that he's 10th on the team in box plus minus and has a 0 box plus minus. It doesn't matter because I see it with my eyes. I see how teams guard him. And something I said about Kawhi, and I'm not comparing him to Kawhi. Kawhi is a fundamentally better player, way better player. What I'm saying about Brandon Ingram, it's true about Kawhi as well. It helps to have one of these guys. It helps to have a guy who you feel like you can give it to him and he can get 2 points, or he can draw 2 defenders and make the right pass. He is a better passer than Kawhi. He's not a better defender than Kawhi, but man, it's not for a lack of trying. He has busted his chops to defend, rebound, guard, block shots, dive on the floor for loose balls. He is buying in. He has come into this situation with as open a mind as a 28-year-old former All-Star could. I don't expect an overnight transformation, and I do sometimes harp on Brandon Ingram going back to Ingram isolation ball. That doesn't mean I hate Brandon Ingram. Actually, I love Brandon Ingram, and I think his early success with Toronto is hopefully a preview of much, much better things to come as he continues to become better and better in this offense, buy in, trust his teammates, learn his teammates' tendencies a little bit more. He is a great connector as well as a great isolation scorer. He is the best pull-up jump shooter on the Toronto Raptors, and it's not particularly close. Inside of 17 feet, believe he is hitting 55% of his pull-up jump shots, which is ridiculous and honestly makes him very unguardable in those one-on-one situations. And I think teams have learned for many years that he is not a player that you really can guard one-on-one. He's just not. He is not a player that you're going to successfully guard one-on-one. He is a player that is going to be consistently drawing a second double, a double team, and that is making life way more efficient for Grady Dick, Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett. So he deserves a ton of credit for buying in. He deserves a ton of credit for being bought in all off season. He deserves a ton of credit for infusing his own team with a bunch of confidence, for buying into, just being a guy, just not walking in, right? So I think he deserves a ton of credit. So 10% is what I can give him so far. Maybe if things continue to go well, this percentage is going to have to rise. Next up, we got Jakob Poeltl, man, 5%. I was not a fan of the Jakob Poeltl trade at all. I was very critical of it because I thought the Raptors gave up an arm and a leg for no apparent reason. But obviously, a center who can do everything that Jakob can do, these guys don't grow on trees. I think Jakob Poeltl is a very, very important basketball player for the Toronto Raptors. And you saw it when the Raptors started out 1-4 when he was not healthy. When he was not healthy, when he's not going right, things are really bad for the Toronto Raptors. He is a screen assister. He is involved in almost every single play, either as the initial screener, the secondary screener, the double screener, the sealer, the Gortat screener, the roller, the connective passer. He just does everything. The offensive rebounder. He is like your dirty work guy, and he does everything. And Brandon Ingram alluded to that as well. He just Yak does all the dirty work. I don't think people appreciate what Jakob Poeltl does. Defensively, he's not the most fleet of foot, but he's certainly not a stiff on that end. I think he does a lot of good things for the Raptors defensively. He contains, he makes passes, early transition. He's a smart basketball player. And honestly, he is unlocking all of his shooters, whether that be Jamal Shead, whether that be RJ Barrett, whether that be, frankly, RJ Barrett going downhill is almost always the result of a Jakob Poeltl screen. Emmanuel Quickley getting open for those threes with that crappy ass low release. It's all Jakob Poeltl. You see what happens to Emmanuel Quickley in the game Jakob Poeltl doesn't play. He sucks. It's like a part and parcel thing. So, how much of Emmanuel Quickley's success right now is because Jakob Poeltl is just so good at doing his job. It's a lot. It's a lot. He unlocks every guard. So basically, he's just one of those guys that cares about the details of the game, cares about the results of the game, infuses a winning attitude towards his team, never complains about shots. You never see him complaining when he gets missed on the wide open rolls. And I love that Scottie finds him as often as he does, right? So let's move on to the next piece of the pie. We gotta pick up the pace here, man. The next one is Jamal Shead. Honestly, man, 5% for Jamal Shead feels low. This is a guy who is number 2 in the NBA. NBA, not off the bench, in the NBA, in assists per 36 minutes. He has been so impressive for the Toronto Raptors in terms of getting them organized. There is nobody on this team who gets this offense going better than him. He shoots downhill. He is probably one of the 5 to 7 fastest players in the NBA. A weird stat that I just don't think is talked about enough. Like he really not stat, but trait is he's a bullet. He's a bullet downhill. So he may not be a great shooter. He's not the greatest, athlete. I mean, he's a pretty functional athlete. He's not the greatest defender. He's not the greatest finisher. He's not just some elite vertical pop guy at the rim. But man, what he is a guy who just makes the right play, makes the right decision all the time. This guy makes the right decision. So I love Jamal Shead for everything he does, but most importantly, for the off-court stuff. It's the on-court stuff is made possible because his teammates respect him. You hear how Scottie talks about him. You see how Darko and BI talk about him. Nobody who has played with Jamal Shead, whether that be his Houston Cougars teammates, whether that be, Kelvin Sampson, who coached him at Houston, would do anything but talk about this guy in this light. He is the winningest player in Houston Cougars history. That is a program that includes some incredible players, including Hakeem Olajuwon. And this is just a guy who cares about winning. He cares about the right stuff. He cares about his teammates. He cares if you haven't gotten a touch in a couple minutes. He cares about where you want to get the ball. He takes care of the ball. He puts it in your pocket. Like he's not Chris Paul, sure. He's not John Stockton, sure. Is he some miniature version of something like that? You need a player like this. You don't have a point guard in your starting lineup. The closest thing you have to a point guard is Scottie Barnes. And so for a player to come in off the bench, and really one of the biggest things that he deserves credit for is he seems to be the only player who can get Immanuel Quickley to move off the ball into his correct position, which is the 2. And those minutes with Jamal and Immanuel Quickley have been very, very cool. So great to see Jamal shining as a Raptor. I'll be very curious to see what the Raptors extend him at, because he only had a 3-year deal coming off a second round, as a second round pick. His contract comes up next year, will be the last year of his contract. Could he possibly be playing himself into $10 million a year territory, $12 million a year territory? If he keeps this up, someone might see him as a starter. So a lot of this is going to come down to the jump shot. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And also thank you to iTown Forever. Shed 80% of the pie. The end. P.S. Happy birthday. Well, unfortunately, could not make your dream come true of having Jamal Shead be 80% of the pie, but I did make him 5% of the pie because he doesn't play enough minutes to be 80%. But nevertheless, thank you. Thank you so much, Troy Knights. Okay, moving on from Jamal Shead. I think Jamal deserves a lot more credit in terms of like setting the tone for the defense, offense. He is like this extremely fast decision maker. So often a pass from Scottie out to him, he becomes a conduit for Scottie assists where Scottie will pass it out to him because he trusts him the most. I feel like Scottie trusts Jamal Shead more than any player on this team to make the right connective read out of it. So a lot of his assists are coming off of a BI pass out, and then he makes the connective pass. But a lot of it is just coming down to him freestyling the offense, breaking the defense down, and getting downhill, getting a paint touch, and boom, right? Larry Kane, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all. I will turn 38 in 3 hours. This is crazy, but I won't see y'all until tomorrow night. So this is the best thing I could do for my birthday, is just like talk about gratitude for the Toronto Raptors, because I am deeply thankful to every one of these players, including Shannon's very favorite player, RJ Barrett, who also gets 5% of the credit. Now, RJ came to Toronto and infused a lot of excitement around the team, and perhaps came in with some aspirations in terms of what type of role he was going to have. Yesterday on a Twitter space, I heard about OG Anunoby's aspirations towards all-stardom, and how those were pretty quickly dashed when the New York Knicks ended up trading for Mikal Bridges. And OG then held the team ransom, allegedly, for Surprise ending. Shannon gets 1% on the pie. No, we are not crazy here. So sorry, what the hell was I saying here? You got me thinking about Shannon getting 1% of the pie now. And apparently OG had these aspirations to have this bigger role in offense. Is something we heard about a lot. Thank you, Nick Nurse, for putting that thought in his head. Guy can't dribble, but apparently he wants to be an all-star. And when they traded for Mikal Bridges, allegedly OG was none too pleased and basically said, okay, well, if you're not going to give me the role that I was promised when I came here, when I, left the Raptors for this bigger role, then what you're going to give me instead is you're going to give me the money. You're going to give me basically max money. So he held them ransom, and basically he was willing to leave if they said no. So I think that should paint a picture in terms of how sometimes even very selfless, very non-scoring, dominant kind of guys can think about how their brand, their status, their legacy in the league is perceived. And I think RJ Barrett, for a former number 1 overall recruit, McDonald's All-American, number 1 ranked high school player, former top 3 pick, I think there's still some, ideas that, hey, one day I'm going to be on a team and I'm going to average 26 points per game and I'm going to be in an MVP conversation. His whole life was building towards that goal. And here he's coming to Toronto, and I don't think he necessarily gets enough credit for buying out. There's so many stats that point to RJ Barrett having a good season this year. Not talking defensively, but even defensively, there's a lot of encouraging signs in the positive direction for him defensively. But offensively, him doing what he's doing with fewer touches, him doing so much of what he's done without the ball. He is not first, second, or third in terms of front court touches for the Raptors. I believe he is fourth. He is fourth behind Emmanuel Quickley, Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram. So he is basically fit out, and he is doing an excellent job, catch and shoot. He's done everything the Raptors have asked him to do. He's trying his best defensively. Is he a permanent part of this team going forward? Some days I hope. Some days I really hope, because he is the hometown kid. He is the guy who, as he says, wants this more than anybody. It means the most to him that it works out here more than it does to anybody else. And so, how could you not root for this guy? How could you not want this guy to be successful? I want him to be very successful in Toronto. I truly do. I want RJ Barrett to be mega successful in Toronto. And he has done everything. As I said, comes into shape, great condition, super durable, super tough guy, says the right stuff, trusts his teammates, gets off the ball, has gotten rid of some of his worst tendencies as a basketball player. Buying into role player stuff, when you envision yourself as a star and everybody else around the league kind of sees you as a star, your fan club is gassing you up as a star, it's a very difficult thing. Many guys will never do it. And those guys end up in China or in Europe because they can't see themselves being on somebody else's team. RJ Barrett has not only, moved aside for Emmanuel Quickley to touch the ball a lot more, he's moved aside for the Raptors offense to kind of dictate how he scores, when he scores. He's still the second leading scorer on the team right now. That's partially because Scottie has also bent a lot to make this happen. But also, he's totally accommodated and very graciously accommodated Brandon Ingram coming in and basically taking his job as the leading scorer on this team. So, shout outs to RJ Barrett. I think, his production, his efficiency this season has all been very encouraging. And I think that, he's gotten a lot better and more complete as a basketball player. And also shout outs to him for evolving so much as a playmaker last year. I think he deserves a ton of credit. Can't talk about a credit pie without talking about Sandro Mamukelashvili, man. You just can't. Sandro is the heartbeat of the bench. Absolutely. The heartbeat of the bench. He is such a good basketball player. He is an insanely intelligent basketball player. He has routinely come in and completely changed the DNA, the function of the game. He is a stretch big. The Raptors sorely needed it. They tried it with Kelly Olynyk last year. They've tried it with, guys like Otto Porter who couldn't stay healthy. This 6'8" to 6'10" guy who can stretch the floor and be competent defensively, be a good team guy. He does everything within the flow of the game. He tries defensively every possession, whether he gets the rebound, doesn't get the rebound. Last night, I think he was the best player on the team. I really do think that. People were squibbling over it. Was it Scottie's all around Swiss Army knife dominance or Brandon Ingram? I think Sandro Mamukelashvili turned that game around, man. I think he had a plus 16, 13, 15 boxes minus. He was insane. He was so good. And the minute he came off the bench, the game turned around. The Raptors were down in that Cleveland Cavaliers game before he got off the bench. And then boom, it was a completely different thing. You know, he rebounded, he got on the glass, he runs in transition, he's so connective, he's a really underrated passer, he's a pretty good finisher, and he's a lights out shooter. He draws so much attention away from the basketball. You routinely see rim protectors very reluctant to go back to the paint when he's out there, and he's such an intelligent mover without the basketball. To the idea that this guy was got on a minimum contract. I have no idea how the Raptors are going to re-sign him, but my lord, that is my birthday wish. My birthday wish is that they find a way to keep. That's my birthday wish. I hope that the Raptors find a way to keep Sandro Mamukelashvili this offseason, because I know he's not going to opt into that player option for his second year on a minimum contract. He has massively outplayed that contract. He might win Sixth Man of the Year. He might. Every lineup with him is positive. Every lineup without him is almost all negative. Like, he has been one of the top 4 players on this team. And that's saying a lot, because there have been a lot of good players on this team. But he is really, really good basketball player. Okay, moving on. We got to talk about a 10% split between Immanuel Quickley and the wing shooters. We can talk about both. It's hard to assign credit to any one particular wing scorer, because one or more have gone off every single night. Early in the season, Grady was struggling a little bit defensively. Jamison Battle bails you out. Lately, maybe Jamison, hasn't played as much. Ochai's been awful, but then Grady comes out of nowhere and he has like 3-4 games really solid. And then lately, you've had three positive games out of Jakob Poeltl. So it seems like wing scorer or wing shooter should get 5% of the credit, because one night it's going to be one night it's going to be the other. But shout out to the Raptors collection of wings off the bench, who kind of all try to function in a similar light, which is their job is to sort of fit in around the stars, space the court, get on the glass, defend their position. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, Grady has the most complex role, but Jakobi is maybe the best defender of the bunch. Ochai somewhere between those two, the best rim protector of the bunch. Jamison Battle probably the best pure shooter of the bunch. And it's kind of a nice thing for Darko that you have these 4 wings, and any given night you can just go to one of them. And I would argue they've all saved you at least one game this season. Like, Jamison saved you in the NBA Cup. Grady has had marvelous performances, at least a couple of marvelous performances. I think Jakobi had probably the best game of any Raptor 2 games ago. So it's not necessarily like, okay, well, if we take these guys out of the game, off the roster and replace them with league average players, you're going to be like suddenly a bad team. No, that's why the group of them get 5%. Let's talk about Immanuel Quickley getting 5% as well. Immanuel Quickley has been a bit of a push-pull thing, right? I certainly don't know how I feel about him long-term on this team, right? I have no idea how I feel about it. But I do feel very much that Immanuel Quickley is a better player than a lot of people give him credit for. People always talk about the 32 million. People always talk about the overpay from the Raptors. They talk about OG Anunoby and him as if that was a 1-for-1 trade and not more of a 3-for-1 trade. But the truth is, Immanuel Quickley is important. He is important because in a starting lineup that is so space deprived, he is the one player that relentlessly applies pressure 28 to 30 feet from the basket. One, because he's willing to pull, because he has crazy shot selection sometimes, but also 2, because I think the reason that I think the Raptors are as good as they are, one of the reasons has to be Immanuel Quickley's progression over the offseason. He's become a better passer since he's arrived from New York. He came as a very weak passer, in my opinion. I never saw him as a good passer in New York. In fact, the one year that New York put the ball in his hands and said, go be a point guard, he struggled. They got Jalen Brunson. The rest is history. But now I look at him and I'm like, Immanuel Quickley has developed one facet of his game almost every single year under Darko. We developed the playmaking a lot. Now we're starting to work on the paint finishing. We worked on like a massive improvement in terms of pick and roll efficiency as a lead ball handler, especially when working with a dominant screener like Jakob Poeltl. Learning to fit in off the ball is going to be his big next step. Stop over dribbling, stop getting tunnel vision, stop fancying yourself as, some sort of Chris Paul redux. You're not that player. And you have better players on your team who can do that, but also he should deserve some credit for not turning the ball over a lot. He's not a very turnover prone basketball player, largely because he doesn't see things and doesn't try things. He's limited, but he's chosen to fit in, and his shooting has been coinciding with the Raptors winning. So I think Emmanuel Quickley does definitely deserve 5%. And I also think for whatever, we can say about Emmanuel Quickley sometimes being a little bit, out of control and a little bit erratic, a little bit tunnel vision. Think his presence on the team is very good. I have witnessed a lot of selfish point guards throughout Raptors history. Shout outs to Mike James. I've witnessed a lot of big egos. You don't get to the NBA without a big ego. You certainly don't make it to $32 million contracts without a bit of an ego. But I think more so than anything, it's always God first, win first with Emmanuel Quickley. And, you know, he's got some pretty lofty goals. Pretty lofty goals, okay? He wanted to be paid what Jalen Brunson was paid in New York. New York told him to go fucking take a hike. All right. So now he's on a personal quest towards greatness. He wants to become that type of player. He wants to be recognized as one of the top point guards in the league. And I, for one, hope that he gets there. Moving on. Is there somebody I'm forgetting? Or have I assigned all? Let's see. We got Masai Ujiri 20%. We got Brandon Ingram 10%. Jakob Poeltl 5%. Jamal Shead 5%. RJ Barrett 5%. Sandro 5%. Wing shooters 5%. Emmanuel Quickley 5%. I think that's everybody. Shout outs to you guys. I think that's just about everybody. We've covered everybody. Oh, wait. I forgot one. Scottie Barnes. Shout outs to Scottie Barnes, bro. I'm going to give Scottie Barnes 20% as well. All right. From the day this man was drafted to the Toronto Raptors, he has had an uphill battle with a lot of instability. He had max players on his team who were looking him off left, right, and center. He had a media space that was ripping him apart. Fans telling him he's too passive, whatever, that he's acoustic. He has taken it all. He has taken it all. And when you get hyped up as a rookie of the year, you get a lot of pressure put on your shoulders. When fans get to learn that they held you out of Giannis talks and KD talks, you really, really have to own up to that pressure. You have to embrace it. And I think he has. The Raptors have challenged him multiple times. They've challenged him to become a better jump shooter. He has. They've challenged him to become a better ball handler. He has. They've challenged him to become a better defender. He has. They challenged him last year to become a better leader, a more vocal, involved leader, get more connected with his teammates, and he did. This year, they've challenged him to become the leader of a winning team, and I believe that he has. I don't think that anything the Raptors are doing right now is possible without him, because I don't think the culture shift that happened in Toronto was possible without him. He fought every day against selfishness on this team. He is the one player. Yeah, we saw Gary's body language when the Raptors started, looking him off and Fred VanVleet started getting into his bag. We saw OG Anunoby kind of just waving off teammates. And, there was a quote in Nick Nurse's book about, he's OG Anunoby saw him in the hallway and he said, Fred is doing it again or whatever. We've seen players quietly protest selfishness, bad culture. I have never seen a player, honestly, do it the way this guy did, as young as he did, because he walked in with NBA champions as leaders on his team and he said, no, I'm right, you're wrong. And he was right. He was right. There was a better way to play basketball. The Raptors were not doing the right stuff. They were hunting for contracts, and this dude saw right through it. That's wisdom. He spoke out about it. He acted out about it. That's conviction. That's courage. That's character. As far as I'm concerned, this guy pushing back as hard as he did, protesting as hard as he did, is what led to a change in Toronto's culture. Nothing happens without him, because you don't move off of Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet without him. And I think a lot of people, when things are going wrong, are very quick to remind you that the Raptors got rid of Pascal and Fred for him. It's not because he didn't like Pascal and Fred. It's because he proved himself to be good enough that you could build a winner around him. And now he is winning. Very often within the game, we talk a lot about off the court Scottie Barnes, the identity. I always say teams typically take on the identity of their best players. Tim Duncan, super unselfish, very coachable, very professional. San Antonio Spurs under him, super professional, very coachable, very professional. This is the thing that I'm saying. A long, long time ago, it didn't matter. This credit pie didn't matter. In Bill Russell's era, it just mattered who won a championship at the end of the year. And we kind of all just knew who was the best player. But for a long time, they tried to say it was Bob Cousy's team because they didn't want to give the black athlete credit. And I think Toronto Raptor fans, not for racial reasons, but for aesthetic purposes, have been doing a very similar thing with Scottie. The analytics will tell you he is driving winning for this team. The analytics will tell you that for the last 2 years, he's been their best player. But for some reason, people always want to credit somebody else because they feel a little uncomfortable crediting a defense first player. It feels weird. He doesn't feel like a normal superstar. He doesn't feel like a star. He doesn't feel like some nights he has 12 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists and 2 steals. What kind of a star has that, you know? And it got me thinking about the conversation that we had on the panel today about, Draymond Green and, Kenyon Martin, or DeMarcus Cousins versus Nikola Jokic. And it just got me thinking some people are just aesthetics merchants. They don't know what they're looking at. They don't understand impact on the basketball court. They wouldn't know it if it hit them in the head. There are some people who genuinely believe that Draymond is like not a top 30 power forward in NBA history. And he is absolutely a top 15 power forward in NBA history. Draymond was the second most important in that Warriors dynasty. If you know, you know. Defense wins championships. You don't have to score 25 points a night to be great. You don't. You have to be about the right stuff, because if you give up 25 and you score 25, you got me 0. But if you score 20 and you only gave up 5, to me, that's the plus minus we're talking about, right? I think that it is very important to realize that none of this works without Scottie, and that many, many times this season he has grabbed the bull by its horn and said, okay, I'm done watching y'all chuck shots and freeze everybody out. I'm taking over. And he's taken over. He's taken over in difficult moments. He's taken over when the Raptors went down, when the Raptors faced tough competition, when the Raptors went on the road against the Cleveland Cavaliers. He took over. He just took over. Last night in the third quarter, when things were teetering away and he was really frustrated with how ball dominant BI and IQ were getting, he took over. He's done it at least 7 times. He's learning to pick and choose his spots. There's obviously a seniority complex here. He's 24. Some of his teammates are 25, 27, 28. Previously, he took over. Pascal was an all-star. Pascal was an all-NBA guy, an NBA champion. You're asking him to take over an offense from Pascal. It's going to be very difficult. But as Scottie slowly grows in maturity and confidence, he will continue to exert more of his imprint on the team. And I think that that's very good for everybody, right? Because when Scottie takes over a game, he takes over every facet of the game. The score changes in very drastic ways when he takes over. And I think he's given the Raptors the first serious cultural foundation that they've had since Kyle Lowry. In many ways, he reminds me of Kyle Lowry. And I used to remember how many times I would fight with people that Kyle Lowry was a better player than DeMar DeRozan, and nobody could hear me because DeMar would score 27 and Kyle would score 16. And they said, well, how can the guy who scored 16 and barely can hit his layups and just shot, 6 for 17 from the field, how can that guy be the best player? And to that, I always said, just watch the game. Masai Ujiri once said that Scottie Barnes was the type of player that you dream of, the type of player that you dream of, the type of player you can win championships with, the type of player who you can build around. And I believe that the Raptors have built the perfect team around Scottie. I think they're slowly starting to build the stretch fives, the competent defenders, the weak side shot blocker. Maybe they'll find a big who can take some of those harder matchups off of him, which is what they're trying to do with a big wing like Colin Murray-Boyles. I think this team, from their pressure style defense, their team first philosophy on passing the basketball, their egalitarian approach, everything this team does is what Scottie Barnes wrote down at the age of 18 that he wanted to do as a basketball player. They're trying to build this team in his identity, and I think that he deserves a ton of credit for that. So maybe that was an uncomfortable amount of glaze for Mr. 20% Scottie Barnes. The fan in me wanted to give him 21% just to spite some people, but honestly, I think he, Darko, and Masai are wonderful men, wonderful leaders, wonderful championship caliber people. And I think that they will lead to a lot of winning for many, many years in Toronto. Enjoy your night. Yes, the Atlanta Hawks just got smoked by nearly 20 by the Washington Wizards, which is crazy. Did not see that coming. Without Keyshawn George, definitely didn't see that coming. We'll see what more surprises the NBA has in store for us. And if you would like to listen to my takes on basketball and maybe listen to another 2 hours with me, you can definitely come check us out on playback tonight for the Lakers versus the Clippers. I will be there. I'm sure some other people from Players Choice will be there. Will Pepperjack be there? Shout outs to Pepperjack for gifting 10 more Pensare basketball memberships. Thank you so very much. And shout outs to the people who got those memberships. Thank you very much. Above the Clouds said, great concept, Rob. Loved it. B101 said, can I get a gift? I don't know how to claim it because I've never claimed a free membership. Mandeep Singh said, I never get gifted. Damn. Well, you have to change your settings on your YouTube account to allow to be gifted. You have to change your settings to allow yourself to be gifted. And maybe one day Pepperjack will grace you with a gifted membership. I will remind you that gifted memberships last exactly 1 month. You will have access during that month to our Sunday show, which hopefully you fall in love with. I have had a lot of time over the last couple of days to really introspect on what I'm trying to do with this channel. Am I trying to build the most popular Raptors YouTube channel? We're failing miserably at that. Am I trying to build the most watched post-game show? No. I think what I'm trying to do, and this is what I'm doing, is trying to unite people who care about the details, people who care to think deeper about basketball. And I know that in the long run, appealing to the casual observer of basketball is a more marketable trend, because in marketing, they always say, try to appeal to the largest demographic. I am not appealing to the largest demographic. First of all, my personality is, sandpaper. I'm never going to appeal to the largest demographic. I don't smile. I don't laugh. I am not jovial or funny. I'm working on it. But what I genuinely hope that people get from these lives as I introspect now, turning super old. I don't know what the hell it is, man. 37 still felt young. 38 feels old. I'm just going to tell you that. No offense to anybody who's 40 or 39 or whatever older than me. There's plenty of you guys that are older than me. But man, like, I feel like 38 is like a very weird age for me now. And I'm like, okay, you're officially old now. When I was younger, I used to think people who were 38 were ancient. I was like, man, they better get their affairs in order. So now I better get my affairs in order. But I think one of the coolest things about getting older is you reflect on what you're trying to do with your life, because we all get one life. We all get one day every day. And it's like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make money out of this? Are you trying to become the biggest basketball content creator? Are you trying to get picked up by ESPN someday? And I'm like, no, I don't think I am doing that at all. I think with this channel, all I've ever really wanted to do was build a community that supports the Raptors in a meaningful way, that thinks beyond the obvious, that is willing to use basketball as a means for improving their own lives. Uh, I have no clue if this has ever been the case, but I've heard cases where this has happened. So it's purely anecdotal, and I'm certainly a little bit biased in wanting to see this. But people have said that this podcast has helped them fall asleep, overcome a breakup. This podcast has helped them get through really tough times. This podcast has given them new ideas for their career. It's helped them quit a job, helped them start a relationship, end a relationship. And that's what I care about. I don't want to be clickbait, never wanted to be clickbait, never wanted to be, the tom-toms or the news. And very often early in my podcasting career, I found myself being very disparaging towards podcasts that were doing that. Maybe because I was threatened by their success, maybe because I was envious that my way could not appeal to the broadest possible common denominator. It could never appeal to millions of people. And my girlfriend and I have had so many exploratory thoughts about this and talks about this. And she's like, well, if you did this, if you made your editing a little bit more rapid, you could get mega views. And I've tried it before, the Nikola Jokic video, that super, Hallmark type of, reel that has 1 million views. I am perfectly capable of making videos that get loads of views. But then every time I do that, I'm just like, no, this is so surface. This is not me. This is not who I am. This is not what I want to do. I'm not trying to ruin people's brain. And I genuinely believe that long form content is good for your brain. I think dealing with ideas in a long form content podcast is good for your brain. And my hope, as cheesy as this sounds, is that every single person who comes into this podcast leaves this podcast slightly better, slightly more curious, slightly more inquisitive, slightly more informed. That's my hope. And I hope that that's working out. So thank you so much, guys, for all of your support. Thank you for the memberships. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the e-transfers. Thank you for everything. And thank you, for supporting my one of my greatest dreams, which is doing this. Thank you, guys. Please like this video. I'll catch y'all later. And shout outs to the Toronto Raptors. Keep up with the winning. Peace, guys.